Well, gang, it's week 5, and we are at the end of our course, and I'm excited for you. I hope that as you all have really been kind of blitzed over these last 5 weeks, and it really is a blitz. There's a lot of information to try to cram into 5 weeks worth of work. But I do believe that obviously I wouldn't teach this course if I didn't believe that there was a value proposition for you in it. Okay? So what I want you to be thinking about this week, number one, is you have a pretty hefty assignment in front of you. And so I think you can do it. But I want to call you back to kind of a mindset. Again, the framework that we're trying to emphasize in these online classes is prepare, understand, develop, and turn in. Okay? So this week is an opportunity for you to prepare by reflecting upon the prior weeks up to this point in time. Okay, you have a major assignment in front of you, and I want you to kind of take that information and process through coming into this week. I want you to be thinking about specifically the theme that we're looking at for this week. And in week 5, this is basically this idea of the full mobilization of missionaries throughout the world. And if you're a church leader, there's an emphasis on church planting to see that happen. But I would also say that, especially as I work in this context here in Western New York, when I talk about planting churches, I think that's a part of the full saturation of the gospel. But I also believe existing church partnership, the mobilization of everyday people, and strategic prayer are kind of a fourfold approach to how we in the Church of Western New York are actually working to see this stuff become manifest. And so I believe that church planting is an absolutely catalytic event that churches need to be thinking about. Because I believe that when new expressions are planted, it challenges us to, and it reminds us of the absolute ability of God to use that local vehicle to say He will fulfill Missio Dei in our region. And the vehicle that He's wanting to use that in and through is through the local church. And from that comes the full mobilization of all of God's people. Okay? So this week I want you to be reflecting upon the things that you've been learning and preparing yourself by the things that you've been learning throughout this week. I want you to also understand the new ideas that are in place here. Now, specifically as it relates to the coursework, you're going to have to read Write chapters 13 to 15. I would specifically want to highlight the Smith text, chapters 9 to 12. Specifically, I'm just going to read those out real quickly. Chapter 9 deals with planting new churches. Chapter 10 deals with blessing other churches. Chapter 11 deals with sending missionaries to the world. And then chapter 12 is just the understanding that today is the day of opportunity. Now, why am I focusing on Smith? Well, because really, Smith really changed the context and the understanding for our church in those specific areas. The reality was, up until 8 years ago, we hadn't planted another church, or 9 years ago, we hadn't planted another church. And over these 9 years, we've seen 30 churches planted now, if you count this year. And of those 30 churches, only 2 of those churches actually have our local church name. Everybody else we have been strategically invested in, and I am incredibly excited about that. Well, why? Well, because this renovation material that Dwight talks about here, specifically that chapter of planting new churches, he just hit us upside the head with a 2x4 and really forced us to be thinking about, if you want to advance just the brand of your local church, you are missing such a golden opportunity of the proclamation of the gospel and the presence of the gospel by planting churches that will never bear your name. And I want you to think about that. If you're a church leader, I want you to be thinking about the idea of that you would be doing things that will never bear your name. They'll never bear the acclamation of your local church, but you'll know deep down in your heart that you have made the kingdom investment that you need to make. And I think that's one of the most strategic things that churches can be doing that they don't do because they're afraid. They are afraid that if they're not willing to invest out and they focus on survival, I think that's a huge mistake that churches make. Chapter 10 talks about blessing other churches. What is your understanding of church planting today? Prepare your mind for your understanding of what that is. Prepare your mind for the understanding of blessing other churches. And what does it look like for you to send missionaries to the world? And what does it look like for you to understand this opportunity? I want you to understand some new ideas. I want you to take what you learned from Wright and what you learned from Smith and what you learned from the Christ Together material. And I want you to investigate how these new learnings are essentially changing your mindset on this. And then I want you to not just investigate, but I want you to begin to apply What is it that I can take from Dwight's material? What is it that I can take from Wright's material? What is it that I can take from the Christ Together material, and develop those ideas into new understandings and to new courses of action for the church or the faith-based nonprofit organization that you're responsible for leading a strategic initiative on? Let me tell you, gang, my biggest lament, one of my biggest laments, maybe not my biggest, but one of my biggest laments is I believe that churches and faith-based NPOs don't think about strategy enough. I just don't. I've seen the evidence of that too much in my region. Now, granted, God is turning some things around, but the reality is I feel like we are behind the eight ball as it relates to being more strategic and to be more futuristic thinking and more forward thinking. I believe Smith is actually, the reason why I have this text in the course is because I think he's going to challenge you in how you think about this stuff, okay? So I want you to develop, not only just take what you're learning and your understanding, but develop it and begin to say, how can this create potentially an adapted or a new course of action for my leadership domain of responsibility as a church leader or a faith-based NPO leader? And then lastly, you're going to have to turn something into me. I'm just going to read this verbatim from the syllabus. I need you to submit a 3,000 word working paper. Now, 3,000 words is essentially 15 pages. I don't think that's a crazy assignment for a graduate student. But I need it to be essentially, what I want this to be is a draft of a strategic plan for your ministry. This paper should be focused around the model of emphasis in the Christ Together field guide and videos. I think that you're going to learn a framework there. At the center of the paper should be a focus on the total gospel saturation in a region, how you can contribute to total gospel saturation with your local church or your local faith-based NPO. Around that, you should be able to see and to understand that there is an adequate focus on what gets us to saturation. That is, an emphasis on understanding around mobilization, around transformation, around multiplication, around collaboration. Now, those things should not be foreign to you with regard to reading the Christ Together material. For a healthy framework for the paper, look at the syllabus. Focus on the following. There's an introduction that I'll walk you through. There's a body that I'll talk about with saturation and mobilization, transformation, multiplication, and collaboration. And then there's a conclusion piece as well. So those four emphases should construct the framework for the body of your paper or for the total sum of your paper. And this should be due by the close of business on Sunday of week 5. So you have till midnight of Sunday of the final week to turn this in. Obviously, if there's any questions, any thoughts or concerns, rkozey@thechapel.com. That's rkozey@thechapel.com. Gang, I've had a blast with you this 5 weeks. I hope and pray that it's been helpful for you. I really love this course. I hope that you got something out of it. I hope that you feel like a better practitioner. These are the things that have made me a better practitioner over the last 5 weeks that I've introduced to you. Now, it's taken almost 9-10 years worth of working this out, but hopefully you'll begin this process and it'll make you better practitioner of the gospel, more strategic in your thought in terms of reaching people, reaching lostness in your region. God bless you, gang.